Foundational courses have a ton of useful information in them, but just like many walks of life, some things you can only learn by doing, and you can only cram so many handy tips inside of those foundational courses. So I've put together a bunch of quick tips and hacks that you may find useful and will hopefully fix a few issues that you might encounter as you progress. Hi all of you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to the Scuba Diver Magazine channel, your favourite place for the latest scuba diving news and gear reviews. Now, I know I've made a bunch of these kind of advice videos over the years, so sorry if I repeat myself. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Some of those older videos I made like during lockdown with pretty basic video gear and editing skills back then, and it kind of shows. So I figured I'd make a more up-to-date advice video, just covering some useful tips for you. If you need to climb a ladder to exit the water and you need to hold onto your fins, you can either wear them as bracelets by simply just slipping your hands through the fin strap and then just let the fins hang off of your wrists. You still have use of your hands, so you can climb up the ladder, and your fins are close to hand, they're relatively out of the way. If you're not a fan of that, you can also slip your SPG hose through them so that they hang by your side. It's not the best thing for your hose, so it's kind of like an emergency thing, and it's pretty secure, but yeah, it is at the expense of your high pressure hose. But an easier way is you can just make a simple strap like this to basically clip them to a D-ring that doesn't take much space at all. A lot of fins nowadays have these kind of holes already drilled into them, or molded into them, I suppose. Or if you want, you can just wrap them around the strap, and then yeah, you just clip it to any D-ring that you want. Be careful of rings for a number of reasons. The first reason not to wear any like regular boring rings aren't too bad, but fancy sparkly rings, one is that your chances of losing it are quite high. Your hands are wet, you may be handling things that may cause it to slip off, so you do need to be careful about that. But also with shiny sparkly rings, fish often go for shiny things, so you don't want to get nips on the hand or the fingers where they've just seen something shiny and just gone yum. And if you have a sensitive disposition, whatever you do, do not look up the medical term degloving, and do not Google image search degloving, which is something that can occur if you're climbing up a ladder and your ring gets caught on something as you slip. Degloving, you don't want to experience. If you need to wear something, you have to wear a wedding band or something, then you can find silicone bands that you can wear during the dive to replace. You take your existing ring off, replace it with a silicone band. They're pretty cheap and they tend to solve all of those problems. A lot of divers ask about the buoyancy of a pair of fins and how they may help their position in the water if they've got floaty or sinky feet. A cheaper fix, as opposed to buying a completely new set of fins, may just be better arm and leg positioning. Get a bit grumpy in the water and cross your arms in the water. You're not using them to swim, well hopefully you're not using them to swim, and it generally just makes you a bit more streamlined and your equipment is protected, so you're less likely to bump stuff into them. But with your legs, if your legs are completely outstretched, then they're further away from your center of buoyancy. So if you have floaty or sinky feet, then it's going to have a greater effect than if you bend your knees like a tech diver and it brings those feet and the fins a bit closer to your body. So if you're considering different fins or adding ankle weights or something, then at least try a different leg position first to see if that helps. If it still doesn't help, then you can start to invest in extra gear, but at least try like a proper frog kick position first and see if that actually helps. Scuba.com is your one-stop shop for everything underwater. Whether you're a seasoned scuba diving pro or just starting to explore the wonders of the deep, Scuba.com has everything that you need. Browse their extensive selection of scuba and snorkeling equipment from leading brands, find masks, fins, BCDs, wetsuits and regulators and everything else that you need for a comfortable and safe dive. Scuba.com's team consists of highly trained and experienced professionals who have dived all over the world. Get personalized recommendations for the perfect gear, no matter your diving destination or style. Ready to take the plunge? Scuba.com offers scuba diving classes from all levels, from beginner open water diver certification to advanced technical diving courses. If you're looking for the ultimate underwater adventure, Scuba.com curates diving trips around the globe to exotic destinations. Dive into a world of possibilities with Scuba.com. Keep your mask and your regulators in place. So many divers, as soon as they breach the surface, whisk their mask off and they spit their regulators out, and then a wave just slaps them in the face and they have to catch their breath and they're squinting their eyes because the salt water's got in their eyes now. So only take your mask off if you actually need to. If you've got an itch that's been bugging you for a while, you just need to rub your eyes, that's fine. But then I tend to put my mask back on. And with your regulator, you only really need to take your regulator out if you've completely run out of gas, or there's absolutely no chance of you being in the water again. Because like, if there's a lot of wave movements, if you've got it in, funnily enough, you can still breathe even if you do duck under the water. It's a scuba diving regulator, so it's more useful in your mouth than out. Many divers, when they get into buying their own dive gear, will buy what they're familiar with. And they'll see something like this and think that it's only for technical diving. Most divers who get seriously into scuba diving actually regret buying pretty much any BCD before their backplate. Backplates are modular, meaning they are highly customizable and you can replace each individual part instead of the entire unit. They're often tougher, and if you buy the right parts, then they can actually work out cheaper for a fully customizable BCD that works almost exactly the same as the BCD that you learnt to dive with, but they're just a little bit, they look a bit different. You can actually see the metal in them and it kind of scares some divers, but it is actually worth looking at them and at least talking about them to your dive center. If you suffer from jaw fatigue after a dive, it could be due to you biting down on your mouthpiece too much. You shouldn't need to bite at all, really, to keep the second stage in your mouth. It should just hang there, basically, just with almost your lip strength. And it could be due to the hose that's pulling it in an odd direction, and you like instinctively think, oh, I just need to bite down to hold it in place. There exists on the shelves of your dive center and on this affiliate link, things that are called like elbows and swivel joints, which are just small metal pieces that sit on the end of the hose and then connect between the hose and your second stage, and they allow the hose to come out at slightly different angles as opposed to just straight out of the side. They are an aftermarket upgrade and you do need to check them between dives to make sure they're nice and tight and everything, but they can help with hose routing issues. So if you do find you get jaw fatigue a lot, consider that. There are different mouthpieces as well which may help, but yeah, sometimes an elbow joint or some kind of swivel joint does help. If the seal on your housing, or like your dive torch, your camera housing, a dry box is stuck because you closed it at home, it's sealed, and then you descended down to sea level, so the pressure change has basically pressure locked it, or it's gone on an aeroplane, now you can't open the darn thing, put them in cold water or a fridge if you have one available, and they should open up more easily because it's chilled down. Most dry cases today actually have a little valve, and some dive torches as well have a little one-way pressure valve to allow expanding gas to escape on the inside to equalize, but if your case doesn't, just throw it in a chiller. If you have new dive equipment or your gear has just been serviced, take it for a test dive before your big trip. Even if you're just diving in a swimming pool, the cycling of the action, especially with regulators when you're breathing and just kind of using your inflator, is going to let all of the new O-ring seals and things just settle into place, and in some cases your regulators or your BCD may need to be adjusted a little bit. Some regulators will free flow a little, causing them to just bubble constantly, which really gets annoying, and all you have to do is just bring it back to your service center to give them a little tweak. It's usually included in the service anyway because they know that regulators bed in, but what you don't want is for your regulators to be free-flowing or just bubbling consistently on day one of your week-long trip without the fundamental tool that you need to just adjust them. So just take them for a dive, doesn't matter where it is, doesn't have to be anywhere particularly glamorous, just to get all the bits and bobs on the inside moving. It's not unusual in a group of divers nowadays to find someone else with the same gear or at least something similar, and you don't want other divers to mess around and like move your gear with. So there are a few ways to identify your gear. You can use all sorts of different gear markers and labels on some of your kits to make it really obvious that it's yours. I've tried a bunch of things, a lot of things like wash off, which I find quite annoying. So if your marking keeps washing off and nothing really sticks to them, then I try to make sure that I place my gear in a very specific place, like right on the end of a rail, where it would be really hard for someone else to mistake it for theirs. So just think about where you're placing it. Don't just chuck it and just expect it to be there when you get back. Try and put it somewhere very specific, slightly out of the way, and that way it's a bit more obvious that it's yours. Take a moment to wax your zippers. It will make a surprising improvement. Even though I wash my suit before storage, it's not unusual for it to stiffen from like salt buildup and just general drying out. So get some zipper wax. Actually just get any like wax. You know, I've seen some divers use candle wax, beeswax, but just you get proper like zipper wax with a proper application brush and things just to get any kind of salt and sand build up, and give it a good rub and actually slide the zipper back and forwards a few times throughout the entire zip, just to coat the whole mechanism with wax. The wax will help to lubricate the movement so it moves more easily, and it also helps to create a hydrophobic layer over all of the teeth and things to help keep the water from getting to the actual zipper. Just obviously be careful with dry zips. Make sure that you follow the manufacturer's instructions, but yeah, just do your suit a favor because otherwise it just keeps sticking and it gets really hard. So it's just worth giving a quick wax between dives, and that way it just lasts a lot longer. If you're struggling to get hold of an O-ring and you don't want to like stab it with a dental pick, then stroke it on both sides from one point around the edges and then towards the top by pushing both sides. It's going to bunch up and give you something to grab hold of or hook something underneath with less chance of stabbing it. And to get them back on, if you do this quite frequently with hoses, then you can just make up some heat shrink guides to protect the threads on the hose and the O-ring itself, just like this. They're quite easy. I usually have some heat shrink tape in a few different sizes because it's quite useful for a range of things, and yeah, it is just a useful way to help get O-rings on without running them over those sharp threads. Now I have to have a tip that involves bolt snaps. If you're struggling to grab hold of something like a bungee around a DSMB when you're wearing gloves, then use the hook of your bolt snap to grab it and pull it out. If it's a common issue, then I'll usually add some kind of a pull tab onto that bungee, but if there's something that I suddenly can't grab on a dive, then instead of having to take my gloves off or whatever, I usually have a spare bolt snap on my person that you can just use to hook under small bungees or lines, just to pull it out. Now you can grab hold of it, stow your bolt snap away and get on with whatever you're doing. A simple pair of socks can make a world of difference if your boots are rubbing. When wet, the thin skin on your feet can rub and create sores that on a diving trip don't heal well, because as soon as it starts to heal, then you just constantly soak it again and the scab comes off. So a pair of like trainer socks, you can get fancy like Lycra socks and things nowadays. They can add an extra layer of protection to prevent from rubbing and from sores to begin with. So yeah, it's always worth bringing, even if it is just a basic pair of socks. You wear socks under most shoes, especially running trainers, so yeah, why not under your dive boots? Learn a daisy chain knot if you dive with a reef hook, or if you encounter a large length of line without some kind of a spool to wrap it up. It's a very useful knot. I don't know the exact name for it, but yeah, I just call it a daisy chain. Create a bight, which is just a fancy word for a loop, twist, and then push another bight through that loop that you've created, and just continue to put a fresh bight through each loop that you create. This uses up a lot of length of that line, and then with the final bit, you finish it by clipping that final bight that like holds that whole length. The beauty of this is that when you need to unthread it, you can just unclip it and just pull, and the entire thing unravels. So that's why it's very popular with reef hooks, because you can stow it somewhere quite neatly without an entire reel or a spool or something, or just a whole load of line just kind of stowed away in a pocket that ends up tangling. It's nice and neat, and then when you want to actually deploy it, just unclip it and then it creates a nice long leash. So there are a handful of tips and hacks that hopefully you found useful, and if you have any of your own, then please let us know down in the comments below. But one of the best things that you can do to improve your scuba diving is to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and to remember to check out today's sponsor Scuba.com by clicking on this link up here in the corner. Thank you for watching everybody, and of course, safe diving.